Our story begins on an ordinary day with John, an everyday guy but with a problematic arse and hot temper. He is headed to the movie theatre. He likes the occasional trip to the local cinema where he'd immerse himself in the world of dreams. This particular day was no different. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and John, whistling a merry tune while letting out a fart from his arse, walked down the familiar path to the cinema. His heart was rife with anticipation, his mind filled with thoughts of the film about a circus he was about to watch. John loves the circus. He had been waiting for this release for months, and the day had finally come. The theatre, a beacon of escape for him, was just around the corner. He could already smell the popcorn, feel the plush seats, hear the hushed whispers. Another loud fart slipped out from his arsehole. This time, it was a bit wet as well. Little did John know this was not going to be a typical day at the cinema. No sooner had the opening credits started to roll than John began to feel an unsettling sensation in his stomach. It was like 1,000 tiny fists were punching from the inside out. He tried to brush it off, crediting it to the butter-laden popcorn he had eagerly consumed during the previews. Another fart escaped. As the film played on, the discomfort grew, morphing from a dull ache into annoying pain. His stomach clenched and churned, like a washing machine on an endless spin cycle. His palms became sweaty, his heart pounded in his chest, and his face turned a shade of green that would make the Incredible Hulk envious. He tried to focus on the movie, to lose himself in the plot, but the pain in his asshole was insistent, demanding his attention. He squirmed in his seat, adjusting his position in a futile attempt to alleviate the discomfort. He hoped, he prayed, he pleaded for it to pass. But as the minutes ticked by, it became clear that this was more than just a minor annoyance. As the movie reached its climax, so did John's discomfort. And then it happened. In the heart of the darkness and the crescendo of cinematic sound, an incident of a far less theatrical nature took place. A catastrophe, if you will, one that would make even the most hardened of hearts cringe in sympathy. John, our unsuspecting protagonist, found himself in a situation that was far from the thrilling plot twist he was expecting on the silver screen. A calamity of the most personal kind occurred. A disaster that defied the laws of etiquette and social norms. Yes, dear listeners, John had just experienced the unthinkable. He shat his own pants once again. But this was no ordinary accident. No, this was a disaster of epic proportions, one that instantly transformed our John from a casual moviegoer into an unwilling spectacle of his own. In the midst of this predicament, John's face turned a shade of crimson that would rival the red carpet he had walked upon earlier. His eyes darted around the dimly lit theatre, praying that the darkness would be his ally, his saviour from the impending embarrassment. Fate was not on his side. The foul odour, a cruel testament of his predicament, began to permeate the air, much to the chagrin of his fellow moviegoers. But our John, ever the stoic, attempted to maintain his composure. He clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white under the strain. His heart pounded against his chest as he struggled to suppress the waves of embarrassment washing over him. He attempted a nonchalant shrug, a futile effort to dismiss the incident as nothing more than a minor inconvenience. However, the reality was far from it. His attempt at casual indifference was as transparent as a glass window. The whispers grew louder, the pointing fingers more blatant. His worst fears had materialized. He was the star of a spectacle he never signed up for. In a panic, John rose from his seat, but the damage was already done. Humiliated and angry, John did what he does best. He lost his temper. Suddenly, the movie theatre transformed into John's personal battleground. His face reddened like a ripe tomato under the spotlight, and his eyes flared with an unquenchable fire. His voice, once a whisper, now echoed around the room like a lion's roar. Like a tempest, John's fury was a force to reckon with. His words, sharp and vicious, cut through the air, leaving everyone in a state of stunned silence. He cursed and swore, his every word a testament to his unfiltered rage. "Fuck you all, you little pieces of shit!" It was as if a dam had burst, and a torrent of anger was unleashed, washing over everyone present. "Fuck you, motherfuckers! You all have a face for radio. Oh, I forgot the world revolves around you. My bad, isn't it? Fuck you! I shat my pants, why do you fuckers care?" But John wasn't done. Oh no, He was just getting started. His hands, trembling with fury, reached for the nearest object, a large popcorn bucket. With a snarl, he hurled it into the crowd, the popcorn scattering in the air like confetti. The diarrhea was pouring from his pants. In his wrath, nothing was sacred. Drinks, nachos, even a poor fellow next to him wasn't spared from his wrath. The theatre, once a place of joy and laughter, had turned into a war zone. He punched an old lady and threw another guy down the seats. The moviegoers watched in disbelief as John wreaked havoc. Their eyes grew wide, their mouths agape, as they witnessed the spectacle unfolding before them. It was as if time had stopped, and all that existed was John and his unending fury. One guy took his camera up and started to take pictures of John. Some tried to calm him down, their words of reason drowned out by John's deafening roars. Others simply watched, frozen in place, unsure of how to react. A few brave souls even attempted to intervene, only to be met with a barrage of insults and flying objects. And of course, John's diarrhea right up their faces. Through it all, John stood tall, a figure of anger and humiliation, his fury unabated. His outburst, though uncalled for, was a sight to behold. It was a display of raw, unfiltered emotion, a man pushed beyond his limits. In his rage, John had turned an embarrassing situation into a spectacle. When the dust had settled and John's temper had cooled, he was left with the aftermath of his actions. As the echoes of his tantrum faded into the dim ambience of the movie theatre, John was left to face his reflection in the dimmed screen. His heart pounded in his chest, a stark reminder of the energy he had just expelled. He took a deep breath, the air filled with the scent of popcorn and his own brown sauce. Fucking shit. Why the fuck am I always shitting myself? In the silence that followed his outburst, the reality of his overreaction began to sink in. He'd allowed his anger to cloud his judgment, to take hold of him and turn him into a spectacle he was certain no one had bought a ticket to see. He thought back to his actions, the words he had hurled, the objects he had thrown. Each memory was a sting, a reminder of the man he had become in those moments. Around him, the other patrons were picking up the pieces of their disrupted evening. Some were still in shock, their eyes wide and their popcorn forgotten. Others were less forgiving, their faces twisted into expressions of disgust and disapproval. A mother was hurriedly ushering her children out of the theatre, her gaze avoiding John's, and a couple in the back row shook their heads, their date night ruined. John could feel their judgment, their disappointment. He had turned their escape into a nightmare, their sanctuary into a battleground, and for what? A moment of anger, a lapse in judgment? He realized then that his actions had consequences. Consequences that extended beyond the confines of his own embarrassment. As the lights came up, illuminating the aftermath of his outburst, John felt a heavy weight settle in his stomach. It wasn't just the aftermath of his actions, it was the aftermath of his choices. Choices that he would have to live with, choices that had turned a simple trip to the movies into a spectacle of his worst moments. John's day at the cinema had turned into a day he would rather forget. As John walked out of the theatre, he couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. A tinge of embarrassment washed over him as he replayed the day's spectacle in his mind. The morning had started off innocently enough, just a simple trip to the movies, a routine he had grown fond of. But as the day unfolded, it took a turn that he hadn't seen coming, a turn that had left him feeling mortified. He remembered the unsettling feeling that had crept up on him, the unfortunate incident that had led to his embarrassment. He could still feel the heat of his cheeks as he recalled the outrageous outburst that had followed. He had lost control, anger taking over, words flying out before he even had a chance to think them through. John's actions had turned an ordinary day into a spectacle that had left him the center of attention, but not in the way he had ever hoped for. He had let his anger get the best of him. He had let his embarrassment control his actions. As he walked, he began to see where he had gone wrong. He hadn't handled the situation well. He hadn't handled his embarrassment well. He had let his emotions take control. He had let his anger dictate his actions once again. But as he reflected, John also saw an opportunity for change, for growth. He realized that he could learn from this day, from this incident. Maybe he could learn to control his anger and his asshole, to handle it all. He could learn to react differently, to hold his diarrhea inside his arse. This day, this unforgettable day, had taught him a valuable lesson. It had shown him that he had the power to change, to grow, to become a better person. It had shown him that every situation he can control his shit, his brown sauce, his diarrhea, his will to punch old people in the face. Ass, anal, dick, 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 fuck, ass, asshole, brown sauce, shit, shit, shit. John's ordinary day at the movies had turned into an unforgettable one. And although he would rather forget the day's events, he knew he would always remember the lessons he had learned. John, a man, his asshole and his misplaced rage.